Hi, welcome to GenAI Live from Las Vegas at the reInvent Expo Hall. We are so excited to have our partner Weights and Biases with us, where we're going to be talking about generative AI and how we help our customers, enter and master this brave new world of generative AI. Sitting right next to me, I've got Adrian San Miguel.
Hi, folks. Thank you, Wayne. You may have forgotten to introduce yourself, though.
And that's right. My name is Wayne Saxe, and I'm a Principal Partner Solutions Architecture Manager with AWS.
Yeah, I know. It's been a bit of a day. So, hey, folks, my name is Adrian San Miguel. I'm a Principal Partner Enterprise Architect here at AWS. Much like Wayne, I dabble in a lot of different technologies, working with partners such as Robin over at Weights and Biases in helping figure out what that brave new world looks like. It's anything from identification of problems to go solve for, use cases, which model to use when, how do you go out, where do you make that breakoff point on building versus training. But we're not here to talk about that. What we are here to talk about is what Robin and Weights and Biases have been getting up to in this space. Robin, would you mind please introducing yourself and letting us know what we're here to talk about?
Of course. Adrian, Wayne, pleasure. Thank you. So Weights and Biases is relied on by over 1,300 organizations worldwide. Organizations like AstraZeneca, Canva, Toyota, Snowflake, NVIDIA, many of whom are here today at reInvent. And they rely on us to be a system of record for their AI, whether they're training and fine-tuning models, or whether they're developing GenAI applications and trying to move those into production with confidence.
It's interesting that you mentioned with confidence, because any of us, myself included, I love building, I love tinkering. I try to fail fast, but I'm not ever the best at doing that. But being able to have that vote of confidence and working with the trusted partner, that's what really makes this so important, because it's one thing to tinker, but to actually put yourself out there and provide something as a service to customers, you want to have that vote of confidence and the level of assurance that you would have in somebody like a Weights and Biases to help get you from concept to production in a relatively fast amount of time.
Yeah, and I think that, confidence is a big word for us, both in terms of working with large global organizations and helping them move models into production, but also in this new world of GenAI applications, right? Because I think what everyone is struggling with is GenAI is easy to demo, but it's hard to productionize. And so, we are 2 years on from ChatGPT shocking the world and shocking executives into thinking about what's possible. And we've seen this plethora of demos, but a lot of organizations are struggling to move those applications into production with confidence, or they've done it and they've got a little burnt as well, and now they're gun shine. So that's the big problem we're focused on solving for companies large and small.
So I'm curious, when you talk about customers having difficulties moving to production with confidence, that's a big subject, because is it the confidence that's holding them back? Like they don't know that they're going to get the outcome that they're looking for, that they can't control their costs, or that there might be other responsible AI type considerations? Like where's the roadblock between getting from demo, from concept, all the way through to scale out production?
I think the first thing you have to do is you have to start with a deep understanding of the nature of the technology that we're now wrestling with. Large language models, foundation models, they are a different type of technology than we've been used to. And the fundamental characteristic is that they're non-deterministic, they're probabilistic. Right? So, for example, if you go use ChatGPT and you ask the same question, same person 5 days in a row, you'll get 5 different answers. Right? So both what makes them powerful is also what makes them difficult to harness for a business who wants consistency, reliability, robustness. And so that's the fundamental nature of the challenge. And because the nature of the technology is different, you actually need a different developer workflow to address that challenge. And so I think that's where a lot of companies get tripped up, is they're thinking like this is traditional software, and it's not traditional software, and they're following traditional software techniques, and that's where you run into problems.
I think you may have hit the nail on the head, and I've mentioned this to Wayne earlier. Immediately after the Peter DeSantis keynote yesterday, I had a partner come up to me and said, hey, this sounds like a challenge. Let's go build a trillion size model. And are you really sure you want to go do that? Because this can not only be extremely expensive, but if you're approaching it as exactly as you mentioned, just traditional software development, it's a bear that's never going to be unraveled. And it's very interesting the path that Weights and Biases took here to help customers solve this problem, because otherwise, exactly as you mentioned it, 5 different questions, 5 different answers, 5 different potentials for you to go through. And I think the larger the set of variables and the token windows, et cetera, that start getting thrown together to make these larger size and more complex apps, it's never really getting to the end of the rainbow, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think that being in that level of confidence and having that level of credibility is huge here, because it's fundamentally, it's almost like a new software evolution where the developer workflow has to change, the organizational culture has to change, even a level of comfort of saying, hey, this may not be the full solution, but can help you do things better, faster, smarter, cheaper. That can be culture shock for a lot of folks.
I think you're right, and I think the big difference is, traditional software has been a very linear process. I develop it, I do my unit tests, I pass, fail, right? And you sort of do your testing at the end. You actually have to have a different approach for GenAI workflows, and you have to put evaluations in the core of your workflow. And by evaluations, we mean, for a given input, how does that output perform? And are you systematically tracking that, right? So in order to have evaluations, you've got to have 2 core components. You've got to be able to trace every input, every output, and all the metadata associated with it. So for example, if you're dealing with agentic applications, what are the tasks? What are the applications it's interacting with? And then you've got to be able to score that output, whether that's being scored by a human, an expert, or whether that's being scored by an LLM judge. Once you've got those 2 pieces, then you've got the beginnings of an evaluation framework, and you can start to answer questions like, should I be fine-tuning? Should I be changing my RAG application? Should I be changing my underlying model? Does my application get better or worse when I do that? Rather than just developing with vibes and just sticking my finger in the air and go, I think so. Right? Or I've done an exec's done a couple of tests and yeah, let's do it.
So you mean you're not supposed to jump and go put the new model in that dropped today?
And that's an interesting problem, right? Because it's not an obvious and easy question to answer. Is like, do I need a new model?
Right.
Or really, what model should I start with?
Right.
And that, for many customers and many practitioners, it's just like a finger in the wind. Where do I start?
Yeah. And that's normally when I hear that question, or someone goes, should I do RAG? Should I do fine tuning? Which model should I start with? That's a flag to me that you haven't yet built an evaluation framework. Because if you have that, you've got a systematic of, well, go try it and then see whether your application has got better or worse. And when we say better or worse, and you're evaluating it across the accuracy of the response, the latency, the cost, right? These models don't come free, right? So how many tokens are you using? The user experience, so you might care about, the brand experience that experience is giving off as well. So, you can start with a very simple evaluation framework and then evolve it over time, but you need an evaluation framework as a starting point.
So vibes are not good enough is what I'm taking away from this.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's a good segue, Wayne, I think. Would love to hear, Robin, about the solution that you've created. Would love to understand how you arrived at this point, destination, and what you've seen as far as impact to your customers. Would be very curious to hear about that.
Yeah, so yesterday we announced here at reInvent the general availability of our new product called Weave.
Congrats.
And Weave is focused on this problem of evaluations for GenAI applications. And it's available both in multi-tenant as well as in single-tenant in the AWS cloud as well. So for enterprises that have more sort of stringent data residency needs as well. And so the core of Weave, as I say, it starts with evaluations, right? We help customers build evaluation framework, and we come with some pre-built out of the box. So if you want to understand toxicity or relevance, or if you want to build some custom ones yourself. And then we actually have the ability to trace, as I say, every input, every output, and all the metadata. So you're systematically building this system of record, and you can understand, is your application getting better or worse over time as you're trying different techniques? And so we're excited. We've spent the last year building this with our customers. We're using the 1,300 customers that we have. We've gone out and sort of co-designed this with them. So we haven't built this in a vacuum. And one of the big learnings is this workflow, which is an iterative sort of experimental workflow, is very similar to the workflow of building a model from scratch, which is just what we've been doing, helping customers do for the last sort of 5-6 years, whether it's the foundation model builders or the leaders in each of their industries. So we've sort of taken that knowledge and then applied it to this new adjacent problem of GenAI workflows, and how do you actually put evaluations at the heart of this, and don't just develop with vibes.
Well, for me personally, I'm sure you feel the same way in your patch and Remit. I work with a significant number of partners that feel like the velocity that they have in their edge technologically may be sacrificed if they have to stop and evaluate repeatedly. So it's very interesting to hear you say that you've deliberately gone out of your way and worked with your customers to make sure that you're iteratively validating improvement, potential worsening, and making it a little more easy and consumable for the customer to say, hey, I can have significantly better performance throughput latency. It's going to cost me more. Or I can save money and be a little less accurate, but still have fantastic latency. Or make that decision, the inflection point that we have talked about many times of, I want to be as accurate as possible and I don't care how much it costs.
Right.
So that is truly opening the door for transformation and really evolution as far as a business and consumer goes, because giving that to you in the power of your hands without having to stop production, stop iteration, do your evaluations, and be able to make an objective decision, that's huge. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a critical part to it, right? To your point, you often hear the question, everyone goes, what's the best model? Yeah. To which the answer is, depends what you want. Right? To your point is, it might be worth the trade-off on latency if the accuracy improves, and that's right for my business, right? Or it might be, I'm developing this at scale, and my number one priority is to control cost, right? And so understanding those trade-offs between user experience, accuracy, latency, and cost, that's what you've got to evaluate, and that's what the business needs help evaluating. And so we've built it as a developer-first tool, but the ability then to actually inform the business and help them make the right decisions as they're moving these applications into production and then getting them to scale.
Wow, that is fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. It reminds me a lot of the early days of the cloud when we were trying to get our heads around what it meant to not need to order servers anymore and wait, weeks, and then it's like
weeks. Weeks. You were fast.
we were pretty quick. But all of a sudden you had infinite power at your fingertips.
Yeah.
But it was tough to be correct or mostly right most of the time in how to apply it until collectively we built our frameworks and our and our models that helped us make good decisions for ourselves. It sounds like you've really made an incredible path forward in that same respect.
Well, we're excited. As I say, we've spent a year sort of working with customers to build this, and we just launched it yesterday. So we're seeing a wide range of applications. We're seeing it across every industry. We're seeing it both in terms of sort of the user experience. Everyone dismisses chatbots now. There's still a long way to go in making chatbots, accurate and robust and scalable. We're seeing it across different techniques, whether they're agentic or RAG-based. We're seeing multimodal, right? So a lot of text-based initially. We're seeing a lot of image and audio now being involved. We're starting to see applications which are not just standalone applications, but are embedded in larger experiences as well. So we're just really at the beginning of this. That's what's exciting to us, is the democratization of AI in this context. We've been serving deep learning teams with deep expertise, and now it's possible for a software engineer who all they're doing is looking at an LLM and the inputs and outputs. How do I actually now harness the power of that to build a business application that works for their organization?
Wow. I'm going to borrow a question out of your playbook, your interview playbook. So Robin, if you mind my asking, we're getting ready to the end of the session, but I think it could be very important for anybody out there debating whether to go down this path. What is your single biggest learning in going through and building Weave? And if anything, what would you do differently as you continue to learn and grow?
It's a great question. I think the single biggest learning is this is a change in workflow for software engineers, and don't underestimate how much behavioral change takes time, right? So that's probably the big one. If you're a machine learning engineer, you come from the world of deep learning, you're used to this iterative experimental workflow. But if you don't come from that world, this is quite a shock to the, to your mental model of how things get built. So that's probably the biggest insight. I think the second is we just should have started sooner. I'm glad that we're out. I'm glad we got the product out. But we probably should have started sooner. But we're glad to be here, and we're excited to show Weave to as many AI engineers and software developers, anyone that wants to build a GenAI application.
So I have to ask one like slight variation of the question that Adrian asked, because he got it wrong.
Fine.
What I'm always most curious about when I hear these kinds of stories is, you're going along, and the path as you tell it at the end of the day is always like, I have this problem and I got to this solution, and it's this smooth path to success. But usually somewhere in the middle, you're shocked by something that you found. And it's not like something blew up and or you messed something up, but it's like, oh, I would have never imagined that we would have arrived at this point because we were on a journey and you didn't have a map. So as you were building this out, or even really when you're working with your customers, is there something that you found or they find that's just like, oh, wow, we would never have known that if we hadn't walked this path?
Interesting.
It's a great question. I'm not sure we've got enough time to answer it right now. I would probably say the thing that has surprised us the most is the breadth and depth of the application sort of problem space that's being applied to. Like, everyone starts with chatbots, and that's an easy one to think about. But what we're seeing inside of pretty traditional organizations and what they're trying to think, and as they think about agentic workflows, how do they take workflows that have existed for 10, 15 years, and now they've got this natural language interface, what it's being applied to? So that's probably been the single biggest, wow, we thought this was probably a smaller opportunity set. Just the breadth of the opportunity and the breadth of the problems and the applications that are being built. Every day we're surprised. So it's not at one point in time, but how much people are trying to build and how they're thinking about business value. I think we're just at the beginning of this. We're not, I'm British originally, but to use a baseball analogy, we're probably still at the top of the first, not even like bottom of the third or something.
I'll say, in my maybe estimation, when this is all said and done, I think for this iteration of generative AI, I think it's mostly going to be bound within applications, less than exposed to end users. I think it does so much sort of incredible connection between, within the decision-making workflow of these applications.
And there's some things that can feel very mundane and very boring, right? Which is, I've got a repository that I've built up over the last 10, 15, 20 years, and it's sort of trapped away and a few people know about it. But how do I suddenly unleash the knowledge that's inside of that repository and apply it to somewhat boring and mundane processes like compliance, right? Or research, right? So I think the world of application building inside of enterprises for employees, we're just at the beginning of that transformation.
And that's pretty fantastic.
That is.
Robin, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you coming on and talking shop with us. And folks, you'll want to stay tuned. Wayne and I are about to get into a little bit of a game that was kind of thrust on us at the absolute last minute, but I'm game for any bit of plot deviation. So stay tuned. We're going to play a game called It Isn't Sassy when it comes from Andy Jassy. Hang tight. We'll be right back.